their better selves, and then ends with some great flourish, some great rhetorical flourish that literally or metaphorically drives people from their chairs and feeling much better about themselves and the world. And so I think that's kind of a key element. Always realistic, but always providing realistic grounds for optimism.
How important is that sense of honesty during any crisis when it comes from a leader?
Well, I think it's vital because otherwise you have this bizarre dissonance. I mean, it's foolish to think that the people don't know what the situation is. I mean, like right now with this pandemic racing through the world, and I can mark the day during I was on my book tour, and the day was March 12th when suddenly everything went to hell, and I as a layperson and all those around me, we all knew what the score was, but then to have a leader tell you, it's nothing, it's going to go away, it's a hoax, and so forth, sets up a real dissonance and a real distrust, and then you have to turn elsewhere for the leadership that you need.
How was Churchill able to reassure Britons that they would get through what seemed like the apocalypse?
Well, it certainly did seem like the apocalypse at the time. He was, well, first of all, he was very, very competent, and that arises from that ineffable quality of people, that his character. But he also, on a very practical level, he understood the power of symbolic acts, even the smallest symbolic acts. There's sort of a continuum. At the small end, you have his refusal to refer to Hitler by his name. He would refer to him as that man or that wicked man. But then you have at the other end of the spectrum, you have Churchill after the first deliberate bombing of London on September 7th, 1940. You have Churchill visiting the bombed out areas of London, and showing the populace in a very vivid, visceral way how much he cared and that he was there for them. It was, by the way, at that point, a fairly risky thing to do because it was not at all clear that the public would not resent Churchill for not protecting them. But he went anyway and found, of course, that the populace was delighted to have him there. But it's very important to be seen being courageous, but also being empathic. And so that was another element of the palette of tools in his leadership. Well, I'm really mixing that up here.
No, but I know what you mean. It's also easy to look back and say this is what he should have done or shouldn't have done. In the sweep of history, what would you say would be, these are the things that he accomplished, what were the missteps in trying to project that aura of not just competency, but somebody that you could follow, somebody that you would rally around?
Well, I think in terms of projecting an aura of competence, I can't, maybe you could refresh me, but I can't really think of moments where he misstepped. I mean, I can tell you that there were a couple of incidents where he tried to keep, in one case, it was the sinking of a ship carrying children who were evacuating London, and many died. And his initial instinct, unfortunately, in that case, was to keep it secret. Again, they're setting up that dissonance I was referring to earlier, because how do you keep something like that secret when you've got all these grieving parents and the news on the other side of the ocean is running through all the papers of America. So that was clearly a misstep. But otherwise, I think he did a really excellent job in emboldening the British populace to stand up to this truly existential threat.
What do you think we're looking for from our leaders now?
Well, you define we. I mean, down here in the United States, honestly, we're looking for anything. Some morsel that shows that there is someone actually sentient and empathic and moral in charge, which we don't have. And so what we look for then, I live in New York, And the governor of the state of New York has, I believe, risen to the occasion and is giving us the kind of encouragement, but also sober discussion that we all need. And one thing I love about you can fault him for many things, believe me. But one thing I really like about his daily briefings, first of all, they are daily briefings. They're sentient things. They're not talking about ratings and how well he did in the polls or something like that. Every day he gives a very statistical assessment of what's going on, what's going to happen. But he also takes a real effort to remind everybody that yes, okay, the death rate is going down. It's only I think yesterday it was 162 in the state of New York. Because of COVID, but he is very quick to qualify that and say, it's not only, these are 162 people who lost their lives, and it's still terrible, and he has a moral core, he has empathy, and he is exhibiting that in his daily interactions with the public, and I think that's very reassuring. I know it's very reassuring to us.
Let's listen to a couple of leaders from around the world. This is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. She said this as she laid out her country's response plan.
If we continue to see community transmission without any intervention, the infection rate, then the number of individuals who we can tell from overseas would require hospital care, then acute hospital care, tens of thousands of New Zealanders would die.
That's Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand. This is the British Columbia Provincial Health Officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry.
I went through SARS. I've been through Ebola. I've been through the pandemic in 2009. And I just know how stressful it is for our healthcare system, for my colleagues, and for families.
Eric Larson, those are two leaders that have won attention and support for how they have faced this crisis. What do you hear in those clips?
Well, what I hear above all is that again I talk about this moral core. What I hear is this a profound sense of empathy and concern. In the case of that was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, correct? Yeah, I had read of her some of her speeches, and I found myself thinking, yeah, boy, that's the kind of leadership I wish we had. But I think the key to both of those snippets was the sense of that there was an empathic human being there, that there was actually a human being there who cared, who understood, and was going through this with the rest of us.
You say that Churchill taught people the art of being fearless. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is that by himself demonstrating courage at all points and raw confidence in the ultimate outcome. Courage I believe is infectious. When you see somebody being bold, you want to be bold too. And Churchill at all times, again, I come back to this idea of symbolic acts. Churchill was very aware that it was important to be seen being confident and being courageous. I mean, when there were air raids, Churchill was more than likely to go to the nearest rooftop to watch the raid than to cower in a shelter. And of course, this word of this got around. He was no fool. He understood that this was not purely something to satisfy his own need for the thrill of battle, which he did have. By the way, he loved battle, but he also understood the deep tragic costs of war, so there was that nice blend. But he always wanted to be seen, or he knew the importance of being seen to be courageous.
You have hinted at this, but if you take a look at what your president, Donald Trump, has done in this response, a lot of it is about projecting strength and projecting confidence, saying he's tough, not going to wear a mask because he thinks that he is impervious to the disease, that other people in his office perhaps should wear them, but he's not going to wear a mask. What effect has his response had on how Americans meet the challenge that they're facing?
Well, I would quarrel actually with that he's projecting strength. What I would say is he's projecting at now actually sort of a false bravado. Bravado, I guess, is inherently there's a falsity there. But in between talking about we're going to do this, we're going to develop a vaccine at warp speed and all this. In between that, he's tweeting wildly about bizarre things, and again, there's that dissonance. It's very troubling. I mean, this is bad enough down here in the United States, with this pandemic, without having to worry about the guy in the Oval Office, and it really does, I think, add a level of tension. Well, I know it adds a level of tension that makes this all a lot more difficult, and that is not what a leader is supposed to do.
You write a book like this and you end up really getting to know the figure at the center of it. And I'm just wondering, knowing what you know about Churchill, if he were in this moment, what would he want to say to people who are feeling anxious about the moment that we're in? How do you think he would frame that, do you think?
Well, again, I cut back to how he structured his rhetoric. I mean, of course, today his speeches would be much shorter than they were back in 1940. I mean, he was a great one for letting the words roll. But again, I come back to today. I think what Churchill would have done is he would have given us a very sober appraisal of what's happening, of the importance of, well, first of all, the danger of how this thing is acting, and the costs, and the likely costs, and what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Just level with us, But then I think he also, like I alluded to before, I think he would have come back with real grounds for optimism, saying, okay, in the meantime, here's what we're doing. We have this group working on a vaccine. We have this group working on, finding out what existing drugs might succeed and so forth. And that kind of thing would be very encouraging, and not falsely encouraging, but very encouraging. Instead, honestly, I don't want to brag too much on, well, I do, but I don't want to really brag too much on Trump. But instead, what we have is him deciding, okay, we're not going to help fund, the World Health Organization.
Right.
We're going to pull back from that, and this is in the midst of a pandemic. What on earth is the man thinking? So I'm troubled by that kind of thing. But I think that Churchill would have come back with cause for optimism. Then he would have ended with some great flourish of some rhetorical flourish that would have, I think, delighted everybody. However, of course, today we would not want everybody getting up out of their chairs and rushing out into the streets. We want the opposite.
Stand on your balcony and bang the pots and pans instead.
Stand on your balcony and take your butts.
Eric Larson, a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Larson is the author of 8 books, 6 of which became New York Times bestsellers. The most recent, certainly a bestseller, and timely as well. The Splendid and the Vile, the saga of Churchill, family, and defiance during the Blitz. This is The Current on CBC Radio 1. I'm Matt Galloway. Tom Power, host of CBC Radio's Q, joins us. Hello, Tom.
Matt, how are you?
Well, it's Thursday.
I feel like we're running out of time for our checkups on The Current. I'm bummed about it.
Q returns to regular programming on Monday.
I am really excited about that, but I must say I'm going to miss, coming on and talking to you about my cat.
Which we've yet to really hear much from, I'll just say. We haven't heard a lot from your cat.
They can't afford her. They can't afford her, Matt. She costs a little bit too much.
Expensive.
Yeah, I'm her agent these days, and we're trying to make it all work.
You're here to talk not about your cat, but other matters, including life in Hollywood.
Yeah, life in Hollywood, especially stunt people. This is a really cool video that went sort of viral, where a bunch of stunt women, staged a fight scene while practicing physical distancing. Isn't that cool?
That's kind of neat.
Her name is Zoe Bell, A-list stunt person, Quentin Tarantino's go-to stunt person. She decided to call up 39 of her other friends and create an epic fight scene. I talked to her about how it all came together.
Everyone got back quite quickly, which is either a testament to the project or to how bored they are. But everyone got back really quickly and massively enthusiastically, and it was even just the way that it spread between actors and their stunt doubles, and it was just constantly every day there was I spoke to blah blah and she wants to play, and I spoke to blah blah and she wants to play, and so it was just this kind of, I don't know, it was like a fire of kindling. It just kept going. It was awesome.
We have a clip here. Take a listen to this.
What the heck's those, huh?
So to break down what we're hearing right now, that's the sound of you punching Lucy Lawless, who you worked with on Xena, Lucy punching stuntwoman Tara Meckin, who kicks Drew Barrymore with her roller skate, and then Drew punches Juliette Lewis. That's just like the first 15 seconds of the video. Tell us how you put this thing together.
I kind of had an overall idea in my head. I had sort of listed all of the stunt women in a particular order, so they knew that they were following each other. And then we would slot, the overall idea was that we would slot the actresses in between all the stunt players and give them a little freedom. Either it would be the stunt player would record their clip first, we would get it to the actor so the actor knew what they were responding to, or the actor would kind of just do their thing and then we would make up the tail and the head to cement it all together. There was quite a bit of juggling. This was, it was kind of a spontaneous, ever-evolving thing until the day that we exported it and locked it down. If I was to do it again, I would probably storyboard it a little bit more specifically. But then who knows? Part of what I think is appealing about it is that kind of the authenticity and the energy that comes with these women. Just like, I had to have people re-record them because it didn't fit, or I would come up with ideas that were inspired by one that I had seen and I wanted to switch it around because it worked better in another way. So it was quite, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a very fluid sort of experience,
Was anyone like, okay, I want to beat up this person?
Oh yeah, there was definitely, a lot of the actors and the stunt people that they've worked with before. So Heidi Moneymaker, she brought Hallie and Scarlett, and her and Scarlett worked together on all kinds of stuff together. So there was definitely like, they were going to either come before or after each other. I did that with most of the stunt people and their actors. Because then it made it a bit easier for me. I could delegate. I could say to Kim, you go orchestrate basically what's going to happen between you, Caitlin, Danny, and Cameron with Mac. And then they would kind of work on their piece and then send it through to me. And if it worked, great. And if I needed something different, then I would write back to one of the girls and they would just sort of do a slight tweak or an edit. And it was a complete team effort for sure.
It's really amazing. And just to be clear for people listening to this, it's kind of one long chain reaction. And it's dependent on two people in different locations having sort of similar props sometimes.
Right.
There's a box of puzzle pieces flung into someone's face, dirt that ends up in Halle Berry's pool. What's the craziest idea that actually ended up in the video?
I had reached out to Dana, as a stuntwoman from New Zealand that I've known since the days of Xena. And I was like, excuse the milking of a cliche, but if you could incorporate sheet in some way, I was half joking,